you know, tonight's lecture concludes the Spring Visual Voices lecture series. Those attending tonight's lecture will receive attendance credit for one speaker event that will raise the attendance portion of their first grade. This is the part you need to write down, everybody. Your course paper is due in hard copy only to the art office no later than Friday, May 5th at 4 p.m. Please send it earlier to avoid being marked late. And now it's my real pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Christopher Cardin-Beacus, who is the head of printmaking and the director of Navigation Press, who is going to be then introducing his good friend, Lewis M. Schmidt, who is this year's 2017 Navigation Press visiting artist.
Thank you all for coming. As Nikki said, we're here today to be listening to a conversation with Lewis M. Schmidt, who is the Navigation Press artist for this year. And it's my truly great honor and pleasure to be talking with Lewis tonight with you all today, and to be working with Lewis for the entire week in the print shop. Lewis is visiting us from Los Angeles, California. He is an artist, a curator, an educator, an avid skateboarder. He focuses on drawing and zines and photography. He's an all-around amazing human, so we're all very lucky to be hanging out with him tonight. As Nikki said, he's with us for the week working on Navigation Press. Navigation Press was founded 10 years ago by two GMU legends, Harold Linton and Helen Frederick. And for the past decade, they have been bringing in one artist a year who produces an edition of prints in the print shop alongside their students and alongside a master printmaker. This year, being the first year that I'm steering the ship at Navigation Press, Lewis and I are producing an edition of artist books that are all being produced via silkscreen process with our master printer, Ann Smith, who is doing absolutely amazing things in the print shop. Stand up, everyone, for applause. So, for the evening, we are going to be focusing on the past, over 10 years. How many years of art history? Focusing, yeah. We're focusing on 1,000 photographs. Over that is what we're doing. So we're all going to stay here for a long time.
You won't be blind at the end.
Yeah. The slideshow that you just saw before all the instructions was a series of zines that Lewis has been producing. And while that is a large part of his practice and a large part of what drew us together as friends, we are going to be focusing more on Lewis's drawing practice, his curatorial practice, and if we have a little bit of time, introducing some of the photography that he does. Lewis and I met in the summer of 2009 in San Diego. I was visiting UC San Diego, considering that for grad school, and after touring the campus, I went out to a bar with a few of the graduate students, and as we were sitting down, they were trying to get me to come to school there. I heard a roar of a motorcycle from outside, and bursting through the door was Lewis M. Schmidt, who promptly sat down right across the bar from me, stared me right in the eye, and was like, "I hear you make zines," and then proceeded to just drill me for all of my zine and artist book knowledge, and we've been inseparable friends since then.
Aww.
So this is going to be an hour of me just gushing over Lewis Schmidt if you haven't figured out. So everyone. I know. I was trying to say artist book BFFs for the alliteration. But anyways, can we give a big round of applause for Lewis M. Schmidt? Now we're going to try to not fall over us going to this tiny stage. You should get up first. Thank you. Okay.
I wore this sweater for you guys.
We're going to try not to pretty animated up here. So just 1 second while I pull up the slideshow. Oh, yeah. Yep. So Lewis, while we're getting the images together, we're going to start from the start. Oh, geez. We're not starting from the start. Well, while I get this figured out, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was the development of your practice. And one of the things that's interesting about your career and your trajectory is that you did not go to art school as many of our students have at the age of 18, directly out of high school. You spent some time out in the world before you became an art student. What got you interested in artwork, since you also told me that you never thought you wanted to be an artist?
Okay, where to start with that? Well, I've been an avid reader and drawer and writer my whole life, even from when I was a young kid. I think I actually placed in a fiction writing contest in 5th grade. My mom still has a paper somewhere. It's about dinosaurs. But yeah, I was really resistant to studying anything. In fact, when I finished high school, I was pretty sure I was too stupid to go to college, so I didn't. And instead, I thought I was going to be a skateboarder, which I was, but not making money with. But anyways, yeah. So I didn't think I was going to go to college. I didn't want to go to college. I was too dumb to go to college, and just started traveling and working, living life as one does, paying bills. Found myself at a place eventually where I was working in the service industry for a long time. Was unhappy with that place. Prior to that, however, like when I was 21 or 22, I had a cousin who was living in Europe, and I contacted her via a letter that I wrote and sent to her through the mail. I sent a letter to London asking her if I could come and hang out with her and her family for a while. And she had a spare room and invited me to stay with her in London, so I went and lived in London for a few months. And I really thought I was just going to London to ride skateboards and drink beer. And I did a lot of that too. But one day I was out skateboarding and I noticed the National Gallery, and I'm pretty sure at this point I'd never been to an art gallery or an art museum before. And I might have known maybe a few things about paintings, but I don't think I did. But anyways, skating around Trafalgar Square, saw the National Gallery, and I was like, oh, that's something that tourists do. I'm a tourist, I'll go in. And I remember from like the moment you pass the like admissions area, like closer than the exit door, I saw a Van Gogh sunflower painting. And like by the time I left the museum, I literally, if you hang a left out of the National Gallery, the National Portrait Gallery is right behind it, and right there is an art supply store. I walked out of the National Gallery and went straight and bought paint, and went back to my cousin's house and started painting. And that was a pretty like key moment. I saw that. It's weird because like I'm not even like all loud about sunflowers, Van Gogh sunflowers.
Yeah.
I love Van Gogh, but that was a moment I was like, whoa, mind blown.
So how old were you then?
I think it was 22, and when I got home from London, I immediately signed up for the first art history course I ever took at the College of Charleston. I was living in South Carolina at the time, and signed up for an art history course, and loved it. You know, it was like art history from whatever, 1900 to the present, or 1850 to the present, or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really exciting.
Then you went to undergrad at Boulder, Colorado, correct?
University of Colorado in Boulder. I moved to Boulder in 1995. Again, so I took that class and like didn't think anything of it. I was drawing. I started reading art history books on my own and drawing a lot. I was painting a lot. And in spring of somewhere in 1995, me and my close friend decided we opened an atlas and picked a place on the map by blindly pointing to the map.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be Denver, Colorado. So we loaded backpacks and grabbed our skateboards and got on a Greyhound bus and moved to Colorado, just blindly, not knowing anything about Colorado. We moved there after picking it on the map, and a few years later I ended up at University of Colorado.
So you tell me a little bit about your undergraduate studies. What we're looking at now, and what we're going to be talking as more of an introduction to practice, is some of your undergraduate work. So how did you get into drawing, or what was interesting to you about drawing?
I don't know, getting back to the core of the question, right? What's interesting about drawing? Well, I guess what I really just love is making the mark. Like we're printmaking this week, and I find printmaking to be super challenging because there's so many ways you have to wait for it.
Yeah.
And like painting, there's so many ways you have to wait for it. And with the drawing, I can see it right away, and I think that was something that immediately appealed to me. It was like I can make a mark, I can write a word and put a drawing next to it, and it's just immediately satisfying. And And in the, whatever, I've drawn my whole life, but in the 10 or 15 years, probably 15 years, I've taken my creative self and my creative practice seriously. Drawing, like the simplest drawing is still like the most rewarding thing for me to see and for me to make.
Yeah.
Maybe not the most rewarding, but it's as rewarding as the more complicated things I do still. You know?
So this is actually, I've been going through a few of your undergraduate images. Yeah, speaking of making marks, here you are making marks all along the sidewalk, which is a little bit different than some things than you have been doing here in the shop and some of the images that we've seen on the screen. Can you talk briefly about your interest in trying to make marks within an environment, or what's brought this along?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we're going quickly through the undergraduate's work because those photos are terrible and the work is not great. But this piece in particular, I really love this artist Francis Elise, and when I was an undergraduate, a professor suggested that I also try to do a performance art piece. Francis Elise does all these like really wonderful city tracing performances, and as a person who draws, I decided I would draw a line from my living room essentially to the art museum at the University of Colorado, where the work was exhibited as a video piece. So I had my friends documented the piece, and I drew this line of chalk. And I'm actually carrying a bag full of chalk there too, because I had no idea how much chalk it would take me to draw a line. The line was 3 miles long, and it took me about 3 hours in that position to draw it. It's actually, to this day, the hardest thing I've ever done.
I would say you're still in glutton for punishment.
Yeah, I am. I was wrecked for days after doing that. Like, it just shut me down completely. But something about that was that, like, I'm still very much interested in the way drawings exist in space, the way drawings refer to figures in space. And I suppose this was the first time I really tried to see myself as a body in space, making a mark. And making a mark that referred to the city. It referred to my path. It's the way I walk to school every day. That's the University of Colorado's campus right there, so I'm kind of leading into it. And I wanted to kind of study line and study the routine. And that was the way I was starting to think about like the symbolism of patterns, you know, the symbolic nature of our daily routines, basically, and how the city affects that.
Yeah. Was this also undergraduate work?
No, this is the first image that's out of undergrad.
So let's talk about that. I wanted to ask you what you were doing after undergraduate studies, and you eventually did go to UC San Diego for grad school.
Mm-hmm.
But when you left undergrad, what did you think you were going to be doing?
Oh, I thought I was blazing right into grad school. Like I was so hyped. Like my BFA show, like everybody was like in love with it. You know, I graduated with 2 degrees and summa cum laude honors, and like all the faculty and grad students bought my work, and I was like, I'm a shoo, and I had all these awesome recommendations. I was like, I'll be in grad school in 3 months. It took me 3 years to get into grad school, and it was brutality because it's all I wanted. Hilariously, because before undergrad, I thought it was too stupid to go to college, and like the first month I was in college, I was like, this is the place I've always meant to be. I was always meant to be, you know? Like, I was really excited to be there. I was 27 when I started, and I was so happy to, like, take out student loans and tell Whole Foods to fuck off, because that's where I was working, and, like, and just go straight into it. And that's what I did. So, like, I went into it. I worked in the department, you know? I worked with the faculty in both art history and studio art, and, like, nothing could have been more, like, satisfying to me.
Yeah.
After undergrad, I had all that energy moving forward, and I had to go back to working day jobs, and like, you know, my student loans weren't there anymore, so I was working at a bookstore, receiving books. I was working at a natural pet food warehouse, shipping orders to people. I was delivering hummus and salsa throughout the Colorado Front Range. I was doing a number of jobs. Actually, the day I got the call telling me I got into grad school, I was like putting pet food into a box. I remember walking out just crying, like, oh, thank God I'm in grad school. You know, like, it was the best moment ever. I immediately called my grandmother right after that, because she's the person who, like, she paid for me to take my first semester of school, and I was just starting to think about it.
Yeah.
You know, so I called her, and she was, like, on her deathbed. She actually died that month. It was the last phone call I had with her, was, like, saying goodbye, I got into grad school. You know, and my cousins were all there with her on the phone, and they were like, she's so happy, she's smiling. You know, like, it was wow. You know, it was a good thing. But, yeah, so during that time, I was living in a little, like, unheated basement apartment in Colorado, making drawings like this on my kitchen table.
So you do have a really intimate scale with with many of the drawings, and that's how I was introduced to drawing practice, was the smaller scale drawing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you move into graduate school, you really start to develop drawings at a monumental scale.
Yeah.
Can you talk about a little bit of the difference in scale, what that means for you in terms of production?
Scale's an interesting problem, I guess. Like anything, if you make enough work, you kind of just you want to try things in different ranges, you know. And scale's still a really hard problem for me, and I don't make so many large drawings because I'm really comfortable. Like these drawings are like 8.5 by 11. All those zine drawings I make are 5.5 by 8.5.
Yeah.
There's something about the intimacy of that scale, and like maybe it's the fact that I've been an avid reader my whole life, but I really love like the size of the book, and like drawing that size feels really like comfortable for me. That one's maybe 12 by 12, but it's still really small, you know. But moving
There's
on.
intimacy and also accessibility. That scale of paper, the size of paper, that materials, anyone can really have access to
Sure.
and really utilize to produce marks and to get ideas across.
When you're drawing on a kitchen table, you don't really have much of a choice.
Yeah.
That's 2006. These little drawings are done. Yeah, but grad school was a chance to like. I think when I finally got in, I had a list of projects that was like 20 projects long or 30 projects long. You know, I'm like, okay, first I'm doing this and this and this, and that involved like I'm buying the biggest roll of paper I could possibly buy, and I'm going crazy. I painted my studio black and started painting on my walls immediately.
So now that we're talking about grad school, and this is a show that you curated in your first year of graduate school, and this is also kind of one of the first times where we will see your burgeoning curatorial practice. Yeah. I was wondering about your practice as a curator, as a way not just to showcase work that you want to get out into the world, but also as a way to explore the place and also to get to know people.
Yeah, sure. Well, this was actually the second show I curated. The first show I curated, my very first experience curating, was a good friend had been injured in a car wreck, and local skate shop, we're all skateboarders in local skate shop, and I had this idea to create a benefit show to make money for him.
Yeah.
So we did, and we got like bands, the shoe company bands sponsored it, and I invited all these like really famous skateboard artists to paint a pair of Vans, and then we auctioned them on eBay, and like we raised like $5,000 in one night. It was pretty awesome. But like, so that was my first time like reaching out to like people, artists that I knew, you know, and saying like, hey, I'm doing a thing, will you be a part of it? And then like receiving that work and communicating my thanks to people, and you know, kind of constructing something around that, and like seeing the way the community came together for that was really great. When I got to graduate school, it was really strange. Like I know I'm going to just fall.
I know.
If I fall, just you can laugh. It's cool. I'll probably be all right. When I got to graduate school, though, like you know, so where Chris and I went to graduate school at UCSD, there's about 50 of us in the graduate department, and you just don't see everybody's work, and so I wanted to see what we all looked like. If I was to curate a show that everybody was in, like what we would look like as a program together. Like, would it just be a disaster? Would it be great? I don't know. And the name of the show is actually The Fucking Train Wreck, because that's what I imagined it would be. I imagined it would be a train wreck. No, this is the train. No, we skip forward. This
is the train wreck.
No, this is the. No, this isn't the train wreck. This is plot. Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There were I curated 2 shows in graduate school that brought graduate students together. And I think, there's the title for it. Weird. Yeah.
All right, let's get this train back on track.
There it is. Anyways, so like that was pretty like loose as far as curatorial practice goes. I sent out an email to all the graduate students inviting them to participate, and then basically they all came in, and like I kind of just directed them and didn't place works myself mostly. I mean, in some instances I did, and actually hung a lot of the works myself. But that was like I just encouraged like a democratic approach to the space there, as opposed to kind of later on when I started just getting works and making all the like actual installation decisions myself.
Yeah. So as we're coming through grad school and we're seeing some of the work that you curated of your colleagues, a lot of our students are in a position now where they're graduating and they're considering grad school upon graduating next year. What were some of the things you're looking for in a program? Why did you want to go to UC San Diego?
A couple people as an undergrad pushed me in that direction. I don't know, had a supposed reputation as a place for conceptual thinkers, and my faculty members somehow saw like a conceptual nature in my work, which You know, it's funny, like, that's a whole nother conversation, but
Yeah.
like, I was pushed towards it through faculty members, and then like some faculty members, like one of my key mentors, Sally Elliott, she had taken a class with John Baldessari there, like back in the 90s or something, and like, so she was all like, Baldessari's awesome, you gotta go there, it's great. And then another faculty mentor, his daughter was a UCSD graduate student, and so like, just kind of by way of faculty, I really trusted my faculty mentors by the time I was applying to graduate school, and honestly, like, I researched schools, and I thought for sure I wanted to go to Columbia for grad school or Yale or something, right? And spent 3 years spending tons of money trying to get into Columbia. And then when I visited Columbia, I realized it was just horrifying. When I visited UCSD, I realized immediately what I wanted out of graduate school, and that was like the people there. You know, when I did a school visit, I was introduced to some graduate students who then introduced me to more graduate students and invited me out to like have a beer or something. And I just immediately felt good about being in the community. Like of the 50 graduate students, there's 10 that I like already. This is great.
Yeah.
You know, so like I saw a place for me there in like a community of people trying to make art. Something that's kind of hard to envision from like the raw data about a program or something. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. So earlier we were also talking about graduate school as a way, or as a place you start to really develop your own practice and think about what you wanted for yourself as an artist, and how you were changing, how your practice was changing from undergrad. What are some of the things that you started to see as you were in grad school? Is this your studio here?
That's me, and that's my studio. I posed for some photos. I set the camera up myself so that I could like have a figure to draw off of.
Yeah.
It's really, yeah, it's nice, huh? That is my graduate studio. So what we're looking at, the next handful of images we're looking at here are like kind of the changing face of my graduate school studio over 3 years. So you'll see a little bit of a number of things. The question was about my practice and how it developed. I don't know, like it's, well, like anything, like if you have a chance to stop everything else you're doing in your life and focus very intensely on your creative practice, like, it's going to like yield a lot of results. It's a pretty hard question to answer those as far as like how I began architecting practice. I mean, I think between like curating and attending classes and like curating shows, which wasn't really that often in graduate school, but curating shows occasionally and like being in shows and making a ton of work, like the first part of the practice that like being in graduate school taught me was how to like delegate project execution. Like, oh, I have 20 projects I want to do. What's important to do now?
Yeah.
You know, and then you start at it. But like trying to figure out how to divide my time between a lot of things was pretty critical. I'm still trying to figure it all out, I guess.
I think that's like a constant for so many people in the creative field. So these are some studio shots, but how did you see your drawings progress over the course of that first year? So we should say that maybe one way to answer this is, since you are focusing so much on the drawings and these shows, at this point you had already started the first zine that you produced at UC San Diego, which is called
Move Along People, Nothing to Feel Here.
And how did you, or why did you start that zine? And I ask because I'm also assuming these are images, drawings.
Yes, those are all the drawings from the first and second issue of the zine. So this is probably circa still 2008 or early 2009. Let's see. You asked me kind of two questions there. How did I see my first one? What was the first one?
Exploring your drawing practice and how did, I'm just going to condense all of them.
Sure.
Exploring your drawing practice and how did the production of your zines help you to do that?
Well, one of the things I really wanted to do when I got to graduate school is I was really interested in serial imagery. Like, I love graphic novels, but I didn't really want to write a graphic novel. And I didn't want to tell a story. I didn't want to write fiction. I didn't want to like just illustrate a narrative. But what I wanted to do was like make a lot of drawings and sequence them. Like, I knew I wanted to make a sequence of drawings that were related to one another, which seems maybe obvious. Like when you make a show, you make a bunch of work that's related to one another. But I wanted to like with the first zine, for example, which we are past now, but like I sat down one night and just drew 25 drawings and didn't have any idea like how they were related to one another. But then in starting to make books, like arranging images next to one another became a very important thing for me. Figuring out how images speak to one another across pages, how like from the beginning to the end, like you take on the information of all the drawings and might conclude with something that is a different place from where you started. And that was something that really excited me, continues to excite me about books.
So drawing and art zines are not the first time that you came to zines, right? Or you knew of zines through a different culture, which is skate culture.
Yeah.
And before we keep going down this rabbit hole of zines, I do want to give a working definition of what zines are for the audience, and I want to assume that everyone knows what a zine is.
Does everybody know what a zine is? Does everybody know what a zine is? A couple people maybe? No, everybody's not.
It's okay. So what is a zine?
To me, a zine is just a self-published book. You know, like in the simplest iteration of the definition, it's just a self-published book. Usually that's defined by low budget. So zine being like something you make on your own that probably doesn't cost as much money. That was kind of my working first definition. Of course, now that I know, I'm really caffeinated right now. Now that I know a lot about zines, like I expanded that to include a much kind of broader definition. But like initially, like my thought was like, this is just something that people make on their own that doesn't cost a lot of money.
Yeah, and that is a very good definition. And just so get everyone on the same level, the general aesthetics of a zine are they are Xerox, they are produced quickly for little money, and they are distributed both locally and nationally, depending on how many copies you have. The one thing that was very interesting to me about zines is it's a way of producing work for anyone to put out work within a community in ways that maybe they do not actually see their particular interests reflected back to them in popular culture.
Mm-hmm.
But people can take it upon themselves to produce a magazine or a zine that is of their own interest and their own concerns, and find other people that are also interested in that thing.
Sure.
And that happens across genres. So it's not just an art project, it is also for music, it is for politics, it is for activism, it's about fiction, it's anything. It just so happens that Lewis and I use it more for art. So on one hand, you have like these zines as a way to get work out there and to produce your drawings in a different way and at a different scale, and to also go back to this way that you've been producing drawings after undergrad, like at the kitchen table, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, quick ink drawing, skateboard down to Kinko's, photocopy it, have 30 copies, bring to the bar, hand it to your friend, take it to art book fairs or whatever. But then we see an image like this where you completely paint your studio black and produce drawings all across the wall. This goes back to our scale issue.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm seeing in grad school is a shift in scale because of the ability to do so in the room to expand.
Yeah.
And how did this start to change your practice?
Oh, this one actually like really excited me. So here I was preparing for this exhibition. I got into the Greater LA MFA show in 2009, which is an exhibition of kind of Los Angeles-wide graduate students that takes place and people at CSU Long Beach curate. Basically, you submit and they curate kind of this selection of graduate students from the LA area, and including San Diego, of course, since I was there. But anyways, I proposed doing a site-specific installation, essentially where I painted the room out black, and then I was working with these architectural drawings, these really simple architectural drawings. But then you'll see some pieces of paper hanging on the wall. Those are actually pages from the zine I was working on at the time, Move Along, People, Nothing to Feel Here. Those are like that was the 4th volume of the zine. So I kind of conceived that volume of the zine as being directly related to the world of this installation, and then actually went so far as to size the windows in the installation so they'd be roughly the page of a zine size. of a zine size page. And
I want to make sure that everyone has a sense of scale of the images here. The drawing that's above the desk is about how large?
It's 100 high by 50 wide, something like that. So
yeah,
it's like 9 feet tall, basically. These are more like just my grad studios we're going through. And it's all nice and pretty here because we were getting ready for open studios, so I cleaned it up.
So a very active studio practice, to say the least.
Yeah. It changed often.
So this is also a kind of shift in work where you're focusing more on simple shapes and geometry.
Mm-hmm.
And previously we've been looking at the body in space. The body is related to architecture, and the body as a unit within a larger system, which is the population, which is also the degree of the city. So do you see some of those same ideas being expressed in work like this, or what were you getting at in your shift of visuals?
Well, this specific project, which like all the small drawings, they were part of a zine that I made called Untitled about reducing that mark making practice down to like this incredibly simple thing. I'm pretty sure I had like the idea that these were all somehow figurative, so it wasn't pure abstraction, but that actually it brings up another kind of real interest of mine, which is the relation of the figurative to the abstract, and how I kind of think that the terms are kind of arbitrary for simple definition purposes, because the abstract is very much a part of our figurative reality. But again, this was about like making like the most basic possible symbolic mark, and it ends up looking like kind of language almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh no.
Again with that.
So just 1 second. Here we go. All right, it worked. So.
Show them the next one, Chris.
Oh geez.
Look, it's Chris. Those are coffee cups that I drew on while in class, and then I just kept them. I still have them because I can't bring it on myself to throw them away. Just some shoes. A girl at art supply store commissioned me to draw some shoes for her after seeing her shoes I had drawn on.
So these are for bands. Can you talk a little bit about skateboarding and how that relates to you as a human, your identity, you as an artist?
Yeah. Well, in a lot of ways, I guess that's a big question. Skateboarding's been probably the single biggest, like, consistent and influencing force in my life. Even though now it's kind of it plays a slightly diminished role now because I'm busy and I'm older and don't have time to skate very much. And everybody I love to skate with lives in another state, 2,000 miles away or whatever. But skateboarding, well, it's the first place I ever saw zines for sure, because skateboarding and zine culture go hand in hand. Skate shops would always just have zines in them, even though I was never really interested somehow. But skateboarding is also this thing that I was doing for a long time, and that trip to London, in fact, where I saw the Van Gogh Sunflower, I went to skate, and I think up until that point it had never really crossed my mind that the world I was coming from, the world that had taught me so much already, like I started skateboarding in 1986, so by 1997 when I was in London, or 1996, I had like 10 years exposure to like the extremely vibrant creative world of skating and punk rock and the other kind of associated worlds that are related to that. But I still didn't know that like artists made skateboards, or that the people who did all the design work for skateboards were artists. This didn't ever occur to me. And then like I almost like as soon as I saw that sunflower and like the word art kind of hit my brain, all of a sudden I just saw it everywhere. I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I've been doing my whole life. The skateboard shop is basically just an art gallery. Now it's more like a place to house a bunch of brands. But back in the day, which I like being able to say that now that I'm older, back in the day, like you walk into a skate shop and it was almost all artwork. Now everybody focuses on logos, which I despise, but with some exceptions.
So as we're moving forward in your
I gotta say, skateboarding is also a way to learn about moving through space. And there's been a lot, like every graduate student in the world who is also a skateboarder will talk about like architecture and space and the way skateboarding redefines their position in the city, their bodily relationship to the city, and
which are all large themes for you as an artist, is architecture and space, and relationship to space and architecture.
True.
Much like the image that we have on the screen now. Yeah. This is part of a larger drawing installation, and some of the things we're going to be getting into from here on out is you creating drawing-based installations. Mm-hmm. So moving from the field of the page into the space of a gallery or the space of a room, and you considering the gallery space more thoroughly. So here we have a cityscape, and much like what you'd be skating through.
So those are zine. That's a zine page right there from Long Number 4, which was also one of the windows in the installation we were just looking at. The installation was that was the Glampa project that was working on in the studio, and then Chris just scrolled through the like actual installation that resulted from those studio sketches, and the show actually got its title from this drawing. The drawing says the source of the truth isn't a source, it isn't the truth either, and the show ended up being called the source of the truth is neither a source nor the truth.
You're going to move a little bit rapidly ahead.
Yeah.
So here's another curatorial piece.
The second one. No, that's the second show I curated for the UCSB, which I think the second one. This one was called Positive Negative Feedback Loop. It's all grad school referential. Oh, tell us about this show, Chris. You can talk about this one.
I similarly forgot about this show until you said you found these
This is
images.
Chris and I's show.
Yeah. So Lewis and I, like I said, go way back. So this is our group show that we threw together.
No, this is just
Or group show, sorry. At a space called Agitprop in San Diego. I think the goal was to spend 1 week and put all of our recent work that we've been putting together in grad school up in space and try to make sense of it. I think you were mine was the like celestial matter and yours was the earthly matter, and we were playing between those two fields. I'm really glad that you brought these up and you have way better photographs of this than I do.
Yeah.
I mean, you have photographs of it.
They're not great photographs. Apologies. I love crowd drawings.
Yeah, I'm familiar with these crowds.
7 years ago.
Alright, so this is getting into
Notice how quickly he went past that one?
they see us like hanging out all week. So this is an image from the New York Art Book Fair. And one of the things that is a big part of your life and my life and our lives together is art book fairs and publishing. And for those of you who do not know what the New York Art Book Fair is or are not familiar with zine fairs, the New York Art Book Fair and the LA Art Book Fair are organized by a group called Printed Matter, who are based in New York City. And Printed Matter was founded, I want to say in the 70s, is that correct? As a way to focus on artist publications and artist books. And for the past 11 or 12 years, they've been holding a large art book fair at MoMA PS1, which is kind of like the place to go if you're interested in artist books or zines, and they do so much for this world and for this community. And this image is from one of the first art book fairs you were able to go to.
Yep.
And the images on the right in front of us there, sorry, I'm pointing to the screen so you can look at the screen. The images here, the white boxes that are on the table, are from a project called Box of Books by Darren Klein, who's a dear friend of mine, Lewis's, and whose zines and books I've been showing to my students all year. But can you talk a little bit about going through the art book fair and what was transformative about that for you?
Well, I think it was, I can't remember if I knew about the book fair because of Darren. I think Darren is the reason, and he gets all that credit.
And I want to give a brief intro to Darren Klein, who is a huge figure in artist books and zines. If you don't know him,
and a huge figure in my own publishing practice for sure.
Yeah,
yours too.
Absolutely. He's been producing zines and artist books in California for a couple decades now, and Lewis and I have both had the great pleasure and privilege to collaborate with him.
Yeah, when I got to graduate school, an artist faculty member at UCSD, Amy Adler, was saw me I made a zine or whatever, and she was like, "You gotta know this dude. I know this dude, and you gotta know him. He's so cool." And so Amy tripped me on to Darren, and before I had a chance to even properly be introduced to him, I knew he worked at the Hammer Museum, and I just kind of committed the ultimate art world faux pas, and I just sent him some stuff, "Hey man, look at my stuff," and Darren, being rad, sent me stuff back. And so before we met each other, we had actually traded via mail.
Yeah.
And then when we met up, he's like, "I like this one, I didn't like that one, I didn't like that one." He's always good at telling me what he doesn't like too, which I love.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of spawned along, and really, it's been a really fruitful relationship with Darren. Now we make zines together. You've done a lot of work with Darren, making collaborative things too. Yeah.
So this is an image from Agitprop, the space that we had both shown in before, and this also marks another point in your drawing practice. You're focusing on drawing-based installation work. I'd love to hear you speak a little bit about crafting environment and how you were trying to relate your work architecturally or to create architectural context for your pieces.
Sure. So this exhibition was called "We're All in This Together for Ourselves," and so what I wanted to do really was kind of take the work outside of I was really becoming obsessed with the publishing process and how we're published that way. But your bodily relationship to an exhibition space and to a book is just totally different. And I wanted to see if I could create a world in which that sense of intimacy would be not forced upon you, but you would experience a level of intimacy with the drawings that where they feel they're human scale, they're bodily, they have weight, you're moving through their world. You know, like
Yeah.
it's not a book or a drawing that you're taking with you through your world, but you're doing kind of the opposite. I never thought about that way either.
I like how we've been talking to so many classes while you've been here visiting. Every time we have like older
Yeah.
about your
Yeah, all week I've like kind of learned something new about myself all week. It's nice.
What year were these works?
So this is I think this is 2010. So like I painted all those gray bricks. I stenciled out all the walls. I painted all the bricks. On the left-hand side, those heads that you saw, those were all like cutouts. I mean, it's like I would probably execute this maybe differently now, but it was. And then all the wall drawing is just Sharpie drawings, and then on the left, which can you keep scrolling, Chris?
Yeah.
Keep going. That wall. So there, I screwed I just got a drill, painted a bunch of cardboard black, and covered the whole wall with black cardboard, and then I did a chalk drawing, so that's all just chalk on cardboard. Well, hold on, there was a question there before I started talking.
What was that?
Oh yeah, I answered it.
It's really wonderful work. I've always really loved walking through your installations, and so often, this is 2010, and we still have 7 years to go, guys. I forget how powerful of an experience it is to walk through a space like this and be surrounded by so many bodies or disembodied heads. But this is an image from your thesis show, which is wildly different from what we have seen. There's no drawings in this at all.
Right.
So, London Falcon, you produced a really amazing thesis show for this.
Yeah, it wasn't actually my idea at all. Hilariously, I mean, it was my idea,
Yeah,
obviously, but yeah, I like sometimes people's suggestions to me are extremely powerful. Like if pretty much anytime anybody tells me to read a book, I'm like, okay, I'll read a book. Like so I go get the book they tell me to read. Like I have to if they suggest it. Like this was also like I was talking about. So that agitprop show happened. And I was talking to faculty about like where I thought I was going with my thesis show, and my plan was to do like an extremely large scale version of that agitprop show. So the walls in this space are like 20 feet tall. It's a 50-foot deep gallery, so it's a couple thousand square feet. And like
it's hard to see because it is black on black on flat. But what are some of the objects that we're actually looking at in this space?
So this is all cardboard. Like so, all the boxes are just cardboard boxes that I got out of recycling bins. Collected them for months. I painted 3 sides matte black and 1 side glossy black. And then the back wall is all like newspaper that I wadded up, then straightened out, then spray painted. Like I created little like mountainous shapes out of them and spray painted one side
So that's all
glossy
this information
and
on the left here.
one
That's
side
the
matte.
wall.
Yeah. So when you actually look at it, it functions differently when you walk from one direction to the other. Like one way it's matte and it looks really dark, you can't see into it, and the other way like there were like so this whole exhibition was only lit like clip lamps. And like even though like as far as the photography is concerned, this looks like it's really bright, but when you walk into the space, you actually couldn't see anything. We're totally blind for like 90 seconds until your eyes adjusted. It was pitch black. People like were knocking down the columns like because they couldn't see them 2 feet in front of their face. Like it was really intense, and you had to walk like through this. You had to navigate this like kind of cityscape of black shapes to get to this kind of what I call a voidscape in the back, which sounds when I say that out loud, though.
That doesn't sound that well. But as a viewer, it was interesting to be in that space and being placed within the space that you're drawing.
Yeah. I mean, I think the point the faculty was kind of was trying to like get me to turn a new corner and teach myself something if I had like thought about the space architecturally or sculpturally rather than like via like drawing and figurative based drawing. And it did do something like in that regard. It taught me a whole lot about the way I think about the body in space and like a lot of what I draw now, in fact, is kind of related to this void form. My blog is called Bridge the Void. I'm obsessed with the idea of the void and how architecture relates to the void, both as a literal and symbolic. I don't know if there's a literal void black hole maybe, but as like a literal and symbolic or symbolic force, like how we contextualize anything we talk about as being in the void.
And also to shift gears a little bit, this was just one of your thesis shows. Lewis, the overachiever, did 2 thesis shows. The second was a exhibition of all the drawings from his zine Move Along People, all like tacked to the wall, one after another, of
That's the same space that the last show was in. So
Yeah.
you can see kind of the difference there. So that's 6 issues of the zine that constituted 175 drawings. And like basically it wasn't my thesis show, but like it still is probably the most important project I've worked on. But I wanted, before I left UCSD, to like see the drawings all together just once, like, because I hadn't seen them like in their like totalizing force like before. So I decided I would just kind of stage a second show, and it kind of was incidentally a second thesis show.
So I'm going to start moving at like a little bit of a faster clip here. I want to make sure that we can get through some things. Well, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, which is similar to like what you do after undergrad, and this is more like, how did you find a place for yourself in San Diego after grad school? What did you do when you were outside of the bubble of academia and trying to get into the
I
art?
already know the answer.
I do. They know.
I opened a gallery.
They
but,
need this information.
After graduate school, I sweet talked a friend into like dropping a lot of money, and me and him both dropped like $15,000, and we opened a space. Like, and it was super intense. Like Chris was gonna scroll through and get to it all. You'll see it. Like that's a mural I did.
There we go. Double break.
So I opened this gallery called Double Break. Me and a guy named Matt Coors, who is a Cincinnati-based artist, wonderful human being. Me and Matt decided to open a space in San Diego. There's kind of a dearth of like interesting contemporary spaces in San Diego. That's me and Matt there. Like before, as we're renovating this, we did all the renovations ourselves, minus putting up the new drywall and rerouting the electricity, which was what cost us the most money of anything. But as you can see, the space is kind of along there. Anywho, like Matt and I we really wanted a place. We weren't planning on leaving San Diego anytime soon. We really wanted a place where we could invite like the artists we knew from the outside world in. Matt had run a space in Cincinnati for a while with his brother, and so he had some experience curating shows, and he knew a bunch of people that were kind of Midwest and East Coast based artists, and like I knew a bunch of people who were like kind of West Coast based artists. So like we kind of were like, oh, this would be great. We can invite people to San Diego to our shows, and like it'll crush it because there's nothing like this here. You know, it crushed it occasionally, but
well, you were always showing incredibly important work, but the thing that's interesting to me about Double Break is the way that it existed in San Diego, which was a city that is, as you said, did not have very many art spaces. It was not part of like the Los Angeles art scene, although it was very close to Los Angeles. But you were able to, just by the nature of having your own space and wanting to work with creative people across the country, you're able to invite people into your shows and create a very active art community just within the walls of Double Break.
yeah.
And you're able to work with you're able to work with so many people
I put that in there on purpose.
But you were able to work with so many people that
You can see him there at bottom left. I think he was bartending. He bartended a number of our openings.
I really don't have a job at openings. But you're able to invite so many people that were important to you in the larger art world. And you talked a little bit about your curatorial program in Double Break.
Yeah, so like we were open for a year and a half before like we just couldn't spend another penny to like keep it going. Which is weird because our shows actually started doing well. So we opened the space and we had this little storefront kind of, and we had this little design kind of like space in the front that we sold like t-shirts and objects and art books and things, and we thought like, oh, there's nothing like this in San Diego. Like nowhere you can buy an art book, nowhere you can buy like cool artist design t-shirts. And I have friends in San Francisco who run similar spaces that like survive, and I'm like, that's my model. My friends' spaces will work perfectly in San Diego, and that actually turned out not to be the case. Like we ended up selling a lot of art and not selling any of the objects.
Yeah.
We sold some of the objects, but anyhow, so we were open for about a year and a half. We put 15 or 16 shows, solo, like group shows in there. We had countless readings and musical performances and
Such as the
signings. And oh yeah, so this was probably like the greatest moment of my life right here. The guy playing bass guitar there is an artist named Chris Johansson, and he's basically the reason that I thought I could be an artist. And like to have him like playing, he has a band called Sunfoot, and that is Sunfoot performing in my gallery. And yeah, I extended an invitation. I think through Darren, because my friend Darren's close friends with Chris, and knows that I'm just like a super uber mega geek for Chris, and kind of like Chris was on a tour, and Darren was like, hey, you should play at Lewis's place, and that's like greatness.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And so that's a band called Barf, is how you say the name. Barfth. And they're, the girl whose butt you're looking at there, it says Nachos Rule. That's actually like one of LA and the US's greatest painters. Her name is Allison Shulnick. And that is like the band that's her scream grindcore band, Barf. The guy playing guitar is a dude named Jonah Olson, and he's like he's a teacher. He teaches elementary school kids out in the desert. He's a fantastic artist. He's a curator, and he works in the art world as well, like I do. And then the girl playing drums is this girl Alyssa, who's really awesome.
So this is also at a bar next door to Double Break, right?
Yeah. So my friend from Chicago, Ryan Travis Christian, curated a show in my space, and he's one of Chicago's greatest artists. You guys should look him up. Best drawer in the U.S. Ryan curated a big group show at my space called Where My Cone's At, and Allie and Jonah were in the show, and they were like, "Can we play?" So they came down and played a show at the bar next door to the gallery.
One of the things that I always really loved about that space and you being in San Diego doing that was you were able to activate that entire block. So there was Double Break as a gallery, but you're also able to throw events that spilled over into the bar next door, like having your bands play as the after party, but also holding the like the drawing parties you did at the bar. Like, what was the drawing jam?
Drawing jam, yeah. We did these drawing jams where like we would invite like our friends and local people, whoever was in town, to like sit at the bar and drink beer and make drawings. And you just tack them on the wall and sell them for a few bucks. There's a bigger event in SF called like I can't remember what it's called now, but it's a big drawing event at this bar called 111 Minute, and I was like, we gotta do something like that too.
Yeah, no, that's kind of fun. So I'm gonna move. Well, I want to see these pieces. We're starting to introduce a larger pattern into your work. So we have all these drawings that everyone's seen previously of figures in space that are drawn like crudely and quickly as a way to eliminate any sort of distance between the viewer and your hand when you're trying to get information out. So from the average viewer, it won't seem to happen very quickly. Then you're pairing that with these pieces that are very highly detailed and spending so much time like rendering out these patterns and trying to develop something by hand that I can imagine is very painstaking. So what is your where does that sit in your drawing practice, that patterning out? Why are you obsessed with patterns?
I think that drawing is called maybe it's that one. Either that one or the other one is called Suffocate. I can't remember. But it ties back into the body and the city and patterns, and I think I started thinking a lot about like what the body is in space and what the body is when it becomes part of a crowd. And if a body is a unit and a crowd like constitutes a number of units, then the crowd becomes like a pattern. And then I started thinking about buildings as units and buildings as patterns, and then I just started thinking about pattern as metaphor with everything, like routine as pattern, routine as routine as pattern as metaphor. So I went off the total deep end. Like after that show where you just saw those ink drawings, like that was like the first pattern drawings I did, and then from there like I just spent kind of 2 years like drawing the other stuff still too, but just going deep into patterns. So this pattern here is actually one of those units, those little pyramid, was an ink drawing that I then like tiled in Photoshop and printed out at Kinko's for like $20. I printed out that installation. And,
so this is something that my printmaking students should really be looking at, right? Printing in space, installing. They should be. Yeah, they have assignments to do soon.
Yeah. Well, I got like $1,000 to do that, and it cost me like $60. So you do the math.
So this is just in the shipping container?
Yeah. So this is like I can't remember who organized that show, but the show was in all these like pods, and the shipping container company pods or whatever, like sponsors these art events in different cities, and so that event came to town through somebody else, and some people with money in San Diego decided they were going to support it and give artists money to do installations. We're so not even like halfway in. There's a lot of work.
I'm going to skip ahead to another show.
Do it. That's the harsh part.
you talk a little bit about Harsh Park and how your drawings are shifting here? Because now we have the use of patterns, we have to use the figure within space, but man, everything we saw up here was going really dark. It's all black and gray washes. Now you're really able to color in it.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
I don't know. The show is really dark too.
It is.
The show Harsh Park got its name because a high school kid got like mistaken for a gang member in Chicago and was like killed in a gang shooting. And she was like an honor student, just like gunned down, and that kind of stuff like just affects me super heavily. I was literally working down the road from Columbine when the Columbine shooting happened too, and like that's like just a destroyer of everything good, you know, those kinds of events. Anyway, so this girl was killed in this park in Chicago. I'm in Illinois native, so that I was also like Illinois pain. But the name of the park was somebody's name. I can't remember the full name, but it was like the John C. Smith Harsh Park. And I was like, that is a harsh fucking park. Like this, like the sweet, innocent child just gunned down, you know? So I did this whole series of drawings and called the show Harsh Park. Because the world is Harsh Park.
Absolutely. This was such a gorgeous drawing show to see. Where was this at again?
This is at a little space in Leucadia, California. For those of you who don't know, that's north of San Diego by about 20 miles.
And we have no sense of scale either. What size are these drawings?
These are like 11 by 14, I think. I did those all on a kitchen table in New York because I moved to New York in 2013 and had no studio, so I was drawing from a kitchen table. That's actually this drawing is called "Architecture as Evidence of Brooklyn Storefront." This is a show called Cy Twombly Death's Head, and I came up with that name after doodling drawings of Cy Twombly the day he died. And all the works in the show then refer back to artists in some way almost. We'll get to some individual shots after these installation shots, but you can see it's mixing the pattern and figuration there. That drawing is called Solowitz Prison. Keep going. Drawing on the left is Death Marches. The one on the right has a problematic.
And again, can you send us, give us a little bit of a sense of scale of these pieces?
These are 22 by 30, and they're on Arches watercolors. That drawing is called Donald Judd Fascism.
And I should say, so again,
Dick Erico's Nightmare.
one way to think about moving from these drawings to the studio and Navigation Press is that a lot of the drawings that are part of the show that Lewis did that are of a smaller scale are actually in the studio now. Lewis brought over a couple portfolios of drawings. So if you do, if you're curious to hear more about Lewis's work, you can always come by the shop for the course of the week as we're going to be finishing up the edition to Navigation Press. You can actually see some of these drawings in person. Yes, and we're going to be doing, so a little bit of like off the wall is of course this Saturday. But beforehand on Saturday from 3 to 5, we're going to be doing a little reception in the print shop for Lewis. That's been, mark the calendar. But should we? Are we done, or is everyone ready to go home, or does anyone have any questions? Q&A, can we do that?
What you just keep scrolling and people want to
Yeah,
ask
I'll keep
questions.
going. But thinking.
Sure.
I'd like you to address the audience. How do you...
You're asking a question for the audience.
Yes, I did. The wider audience. In your use of the figure, I noticed you primarily working with the new figure, and I wonder if you think of that as, well, this is your this is one figure that is for you, and what is your interest in using the body in that way?
It's just all about vulnerability. Like I feel like we're all just like extremely fragile creatures, and I think we're fragile, clothed or not, But I think for like general audiences, like seeing the naked body, like just immediately like strips unattended you of like your guard, And so that's the main reason I obsess over that. For no other reason. I mean, there are some sexy time drawings too, but those are kind of neither here nor there. That's also about intimacy, though. This is a show called I can't remember. From beginning to end, I think is what it's called. Some colored pencils, pens, and black paper. Any questions? Yeah.
So, like, in school, they tell you to establish yourself as an artist, come up with a style, whatever. With your figurative drawings, they're very loose, but then with
you spend enough time at the drawing table, like, I think you should get bored if you're just drawing the same thing over and over again for starters. But like, my interests are just so divergent all the time, and I find that like one of the ways I have the most rewarding kind of synaptic patterns is to like start from left field and to start from right field and to see like what happens. And like the pattern drawings, I think also like they're very meditative, they're painful drawings to make, so like you enter a different kind of headspace to do it. And after working very fast for a long time, like I started thinking about slowing myself down. Like as I get to the point where like I'm incredibly impatient and I just like I'll make a drawing that's literally like a single pencil drawing. I'm like, that's beautiful, good, you know, like it's just a single like line or whatever, you know. And I decided it'd probably be healthy for myself to like force myself to stop and slow down and see what happens if I move at a slower pace. And I'm still like trying to figure out what's happened, but it definitely is rewarding to enter the space of patterns for me. Like I'm also like kind of a little OCD, so like drawing patterns is a way to like shut the brain off, and you just go strictly into like repetition mode. And it's kind of funny. It's as satisfying as a drawer just to make those kinds of things, to feel a pencil on paper, like the way those things move. So it's very satisfying just from a tactile perspective. But then of course, like I really like the way the pattern work complicates the figurative work too, and I'm thinking more and more about that all the time, the relationship of the body to the pattern. You know, it's kind of the dominant thought in my brain. You know. Does that answer your question?
So have you ever done any keyboard design?
Yeah, well, no, I have not, but I've just been invited to do one. I'm crossing my fingers and hoping it happens. So hopefully later this year, you'll see something happen.
You can see updates at bridgesofboys.com.
Can't really. That's the worst blog of all time. So, but if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you'll see lots of shit there. But yeah, like if you follow the skateboard world at all, like I've been invited by like a big company, one of my favorite skateboarders of all time, who runs a company that's owned by my favorite skateboarder of all time, to do a board. So like, hopefully that'll happen. You know, things have a way, opportunities like that have a way of like washing out. You know, so like, I'm just gonna hold my breath on it. See what happens. So, anybody else? I've got lots of interviews. This is why I made Chris do this.